All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started here real soon. We're just going to start now. Away we go. Get some snow going. See? King, king. Hello, everybody. Okay, so where we left off, we did stave one, which is chapter one. Now we're going to hit stave two. It's been a couple of days. I should have been back on, but life, things happen, stuff I forgot. But anyway, here we go. We're on page 37, stave two, the first of the three spirits. When Scrooge awoke, it was dark. That it was so dark that looking out of bed, he could scarcely distinguish the transparent window from the opaque walls of his chamber. He was endeavoring to pierce the darkness with his ferret eyes when the chimes of a neighboring church struck the 4 quarters. So he listened for the hour. To his great astonishment, the heavy bell went from 6 to 7, from 7 to 8, and regularly up to 12, then stopped. 12! It was past 2 then. Past 2 when he went to bed. The clock was wrong. An icicle must have got into the works. 12? He touched the spring of his repeater to correct this most preposterous clock. Its rapt little pulse beat 12 and stopped. Why? It isn't even possible, said Scrooge. That I can have slept through a whole day and far into another night. It is impossible that anything has happened to the sun. And this is 12 at noon? The idea being an alarming one, he scrambled out of bed, groped his way to the window. He was obliged to rub the frost off with the sleeve of his dressing gown before he could see anything, and could see very little then. All he could make out was that it was still very foggy, extremely cold, and that there was no noise of people running to and fro, and making a great stir, as there unquestionably would have been if night had beaten off the bright day and taken possession of the world. This was a great relief, because 3 days after sight of his first exchange pay... Try again. This was a great relief, because 3 days after sight of this first of exchange pay to Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge, or his order, and so forth, would have become a mere United States security if there were no days to count by. Interesting. Scrooge went to bed again and thought and thought and thought it over and over, and could make nothing of it. The more he thought, the more perplexed he was, and the more he endeavored to think, the more he thought. Marley's ghost bothered him exceedingly. Every time he resolved within himself, after mature inquiry, that it was all a dream, his mind flew back again, like a strong spring released to its first position, and presented the same problem to be worked all through. Was it a dream or not? Screw lay in this state until the chime had gone 3/4 more. Then he remembered on a sudden that the ghost had warned him of visitation when the bell tolled 1. He resolved to lie awake until the hour passed, and considered that he could no more go to sleep than go to heaven. This was, perhaps, the wisest resolution in his power. The quarter was so long that he was more than once convinced he must have sunk into a doze unconsciously, and missed the clock. At length it broke upon his listening ear. Ding dong. Quarter past, said Scrooge, counting. Ding dong. Half past, said Scrooge. Ding dong. A quarter to it. Ding dong. The hour itself, said Scrooge triumphantly, and nothing else. He spoke before the hour bell sounded, which it now did with a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, I tell you, by a hand, not the curtains at his feet, nor the curtains at his back, but those to which his face was addressed. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, and Scrooge, staring up into a half-recumbent attitude, found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them, as close to it as I am to you now. Which, is pretty far away. So, anyway, I'm standing in the spirit at your elbow. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child, as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium, which gave him the appearance of having receded from the view and being diminished to a child's proportion. Its hair, which hung about his neck and down his back, as was white, as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. The arms were very long, muscular, hands the same, as if its hold were of uncommon strength. Its legs and feet, most delicately formed, were like those upper members bare. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and around its waist had a bound and lustrous belt, the sheen of which was beautiful. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and its singular condition of that wintry emblem had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprang a bright, clear jet of light, by which all this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using in its duller moments a great extinguisher for a cap, which is now held under its arm. Even though, when Scrooge looked at it with increasing steadiness, was not its strangest quality, for as its belt sparkled and glittered, now in one part and now in another, and what was light one instant at another time was dark, so the figure itself fluctuated in its distinctness. Being now a thing with one arm, now with one leg, now with 20 legs, now a pair of legs without a head, now a head without a body, of which dissolving parts no outline would be visible in the dense gloom wherein they melted away. And in the very wonder of this, it would be itself again, distinct and clear as ever. "Are you a spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?" asked Scrooge. "I am." "I am." The voice was soft and gentle, singularly low, as if instead of being so close behind him, it were at a distance. "Who are you? Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded. "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" inquired Scrooge, observant of its dwarfish structure. "No, your past." Perhaps Scrooge could not have told anybody why, if anybody could have asked him, but he had a special desire to see the spirit in his cap, and begged him to be covered. "What?" exclaimed the ghost. "Would you soon put out with worldly hands the light I give? Is it not enough that you are one of those whose passions made this cap, and forced me through whole trains of years to wear it low upon my brow?" Scrooge reverently disclaimed all intention to offer, or any knowledge of having wilfully bonneted the spirit at any period of his life. He then made bold to inquire what business brought him there. "Your welfare," said the ghost. Scrooge expressed himself much obliged, but could not help thinking that a night of unbroken rest would have been more conducive to the end. The spirit must have heard him thinking, for it said immediately, "Your reclamation, then. Take heed." "Hi, Smoky. Rise and walk with me." It would have been in vain for Scrooge to plead with that the weather and the hour were not adopted to pedestrian purposes, that the bed was warm, and that the thermometer a long way below freezing, that he was clad but lightly in his slippers, dressing gown, and nightcap, and that he had a cold upon him at the time. The grasp, though gentle as a woman's hand, was not to be resisted. He rose, but finding that the spirit made towards the window, clasped its robe in supplication. "I am a mortal," Scrooge remonstrated, "and liable to fall. Bear but a touch of my hand, there," and the spirit laying it upon his heart, "and you shall be held in more than this." As the words were unspoken, they passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road with fields on either hand. The city had entirely vanished, not a vestige of what it was to be seen. The darkness and the mist had vanished with it, for it was clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground. Good heaven, said Scrooge, clasping his hands together as he looked about him. I was bred in this place. Was a boy here. The spirit gazed upon him mildly. Its gentle touch, though it had been light and instantaneous, appeared still present to the old man's sense of feeling. He was conscious of 1,000 odors floating in the air, each one connected with 1,000 thoughts and hopes and joys and cares, long, long forgotten. Your lip is trembling, said the ghost. And what is it? What is that upon your cheek? Scrooge muttered with an unusual catch in his voice that it was a pimple, and begging the ghost to lead him where he would. You recollect the way? Inquired the spirit. Remember it, cried Scrooge with fever. I could walk it blindfold. Strange to have forgotten it for so many years, observed the ghost. Let us go on. They walked along the road, Scrooge reconsidering every gate and post and tree, until a little marked town appeared in the distance, with its bridge, its church, and winding river. Some shaggy ponies now were seen trotting towards them, with boys upon their backs who called the other boys in country gigs and carts driven by farmers. All these boys were in great spirits and shouted to each other until the broad fields were so full of merry music that the crisp air laughed to hear it. There are but shadows of things that have been, and said the ghost, they have no conscience of us. The jocund travelers came on, and as they came, Scrooge knew they and named them every one. Why, he rejoiced beyond all bounds to see them. Why did his cold eye glisten, and his heart leap up and up as they went past? Let's try that again. Why was his rejoice beyond all bounds to see them? Why did his cold eye glisten and his heart leap upon as they went past? Why was he filled with gladness when he heard them give each other Merry Christmas as they parted at crossroads and by ways for several homes? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? Out upon Merry Christmas, what good had it ever done him? School is not quite desired, said the ghost. A solitary child neglected by his friends is left there still. Scrooge said he knew it, and he sobbed. They left the high road by a well-remembered lane and soon approached a mansion of dull red brick with a little weathercock. All right, that's interesting. Surmounted cupola on the roof and bell hanging in it. It was a large house, but one of broken fortunes, for the spacious offices were little used. Their walls were damp and mossy, their windows broken, and their gates decayed. Fowls clucked and strutted in the stables, and the coach houses and sheds were overrun with grass. Nor was it retentive of its ancient state within, for entering the dreary hall and glancing through the open doors of many rooms, they found them poorly furnished, cold, and vast. There was an earthly savour in the air, a chilly bareness in the place, which associated itself somehow with too much getting up by candlelight and not much to eat. They went, the ghost and Scrooge, across the hall to the door at the back of the house. It opened before them and disclosed a long, bare, melancholy room, made barer still by lines of plain deal forms and desks. At one of these, a lonely boy was reading near a feeble fire, and Scrooge sat down upon a form and wept to see his poor forgotten self as he had used to be. Not a latent echo in the house, not a squeak of scuffle from the mice behind the paneling, not a drip from the half-thawed waterspout in the dull yard behind, not a single sigh among the leafless boughs of one deponent poplar, not the idle swinging of an empty storehouse door, no, not a clicking in the fire, but fell upon the heart of Scrooge with softening influence and gave a freer passage to his tears. The spirit touched him on the arm and pointed to his younger self, intent upon his reading. Suddenly a man in foreign garments, wonderfully real and distinct to look at, stood outside the window with an axe stuck in his belt, and leading by the bridle an ass laden with wood. Why, it's Ali Baba! Scrooge exclaimed. Prince Ali, my. Oh, anyway. It's dear old honest Ali Baba. Yes, yes, I know. One Christmas time, when yonder solitary child was left here all alone, he did come for the first time, just like that, poor boy. And Valentine and Scrooge and his wild brother Orson, there they go. And what's his name? Who was put down in his drawers asleep at the gate of Damascus? Don't you see him? And the Sultan's groom turning upside down by the genie? There, he is upon his head. Serve him right, I'm glad of it. What business had he to be married on to the princess? Excuse me. Drink. What are you up to, Smokey? Chilling? Playing? Huh, wait. Is Darth even in? To hear Scrooge expending all the earnestness of his nature on such subjects in a most extraordinary voice between laughing and crying, and to see his heightened and excited face, would have been a surprise to his business friends in the city, indeed. There's a parrot, cried Scrooge. Green body and yellow tail with a thing like lettuce growing out of the top of his head. There he is. Poor Robin Crusoe, he called him. When he came home again after sailing around the island, poor Robinson Crusoe. Where have you been, Robinson Crusoe? The man thought he was dreaming, but he wasn't. It was the parrot, you know. There goes Friday, running for his life to the little creek. Holla, hoop, holla. Then, with a rapid transition very foreign to his usual character, he said in pity for his former self, poor boy, and cried again. Yeah, I'm doing well. Let me try to, we'll get to what, page 4, I don't know. What's the matter, asked Spirit. We'll get down to page 50 and then we'll go off. I'll be with you in a second. What's the matter, asked the Spirit. Nothing, said Scrooge. Nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something, that's all. The ghost smiled thoughtfully and waved its hand, saying, as it did so, let us see another Christmas. Scrooge's former self grew larger at the words, and the room became a little darker and more dirty. The panels shrunk, the windows cracked, fragments of plaster fell out of the ceiling, and the naked loaves were shown instead. But how all this was brought about Scrooge knew no more than you do. He only knew that it was quite correct, that everything had happened so that there he was, alone again, when all other boys had gone home for the jolly holidays. He was not reading now, but walking up and down despairingly. Scrooge looked at the ghost, and with a mournful shake of his head, glanced anxiously towards the door. It opened. A little girl, much younger than the boy, came darting in and putting her arms around his neck, and often kissing him, addressing him as her dear, dear brother. I've come to bring you home, dear brother, said the child, clasping her tiny hands and bending down to laugh. To bring you home, home, home. Home, little fan? Returned the boy. Yes. And the child, brimful of glee, home for good and all. Home forever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be. That home's like heaven. He spoke so gently to me the one dear night when I was going to bed that I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home. And he said yes, you should, and sent me in a coach to bring you. And you're to be a man, said the child, opening her eyes, and are never to come back here. But first, we're to be together all this Christmas long, and have the merriest time in the world. You're quite a woman, little fan, exclaimed the boy. She clapped her hands and laughed and tried to touch his head, but being too little, laughed again, and stood on tiptoe to embrace him. Then she began to drag him, in her childish eagerness, towards the door, and he, nothing loath to go, accompanied her. A terrible voice in the hall cried, Bring down Master Scrooge's box there! And in the hall appeared the schoolmaster himself, who glared at Master Scrooge with a furious condensation and threw him into a dreadful state of mind by shaking hands with him. He then conveyed him and his sister into the veriest old well of shivering best parlor that ever was seen, where maps upon the wall and the celestial and terrestrial globes in the windows were waxing with cold. Here he produced a decanter of curiously light wine and a block of curiously heavy cake, and administered installments of those dainties to young people at the same time sending out a mirage, out a meager servant to offer a glass of something to the postboy, who answered that he thanked the gentleman, but if it was the same tap as he had tasted before, he'd rather not. Master Scrooge, trunk being by the time tied on top of the chaise, the children bade the schoolmaster goodbye right willingly, and getting into it, drove gaily down the garden sweeps, the quick wheels dashing the horror frost and snow from off the dark leaves of the evergreens like spray. That is the end of page 50. We'll join up on page 51 right after this here lovely thing. And we're going to go, take care of some zombies. So I will end this stream and we'll start up a new one so that these kind of stay separate. We will be back.